Hey, happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to stream. How's everyone doing here? I see some of you guys are here early. Welcome in. If we haven't met before, my name is Faye. Welcome in, Kelzoon. Welcome in, Vivid Sniper. Oh, you're in school watching this. Glad you could pop in. Welcome in, Astronomical Very 4 and Yuzi. Hello, hello. And Blue Jay Studios, hello. Welcome in. Happy Monday. We are going to be drawing paws and claws today. And this is a request actually made by some of our members. And we actually, you know what? We have a content suggestions channel on our Discord where you could actually let us know what you would like to see us teach. So if you haven't already, you can join our Discord and make a request. We read every single request, and this one was a popular one. Studying paws and claws to design better anthropomorphic characters and to draw better animals. So if you are here and you are ready to study some paws and claws with me, we're going to get started soon. If you didn't know, we are actually a school of illustration, so you can find more information at wingcanvas.com. Today we're diving into how to draw paws and claws, why it matters, and how you can actually use it in your work. So what I'm gonna do today, what I thought we could do together is just draw a whole bunch of claws and paws, right? There's nothing better than just to draw a whole bunch. So I've collected some references here. So we are going to study cat paws, how it relates to human anatomy, how claws retract, and be really dig deep and dive into the anatomy and how we can simplify these forms, right? Because drawing hands and drawing paws can be very complicated. So we want to make sure we know how to simplify everything. And then after cats, I also have prepared for you guys some reptiles. So these are the two topics that you guys voted for. So I'm just going to open up the poll so you guys can see. 33% of you said you wanted to study lizard claws. So we're going to do some lizard claws today, as well as cat paws. So we'll start with the lizard claws, just because that is what won the poll. And then we're going to go into drawing cat paws. So we're going to draw one scaly paw and one furry paw for you guys. And by the end, you'll hopefully not feel just more comfortable in drawing claws and paws, but you'll be more confident in making more intentional choices and know actually how to study them, right? Because a lot of the times we just draw this stuff out of our head. So yeah, big shout out to our Discord community and our subscribers. You guys are awesome. And all right, we've got about 2 hours together, so let's get to it. And we'll make every minute count. If you have a suggestion, feel free to let us know. Darren, our lovely mod, is in the chat, so she'll help us stay organized. All right, so we're gonna start off with some reptiles. And I spent about an hour just collecting references because, I'm not an expert at drawing reptile hands or feet. I haven't actually taken a close look, really, and this is a great opportunity for me to also study along with you and share how I would go about doing some of this. So the first thing that you do when you study anatomy And let me know, guys, in the chat how you guys prefer to do it, okay? Because the first thing I do is I do research. And before I start any type of character design or any type of drawing that I'm unfamiliar with, right? A topic that I'm unfamiliar with, I collect references. So how do you find good references? You want to find them off of credible websites, right? Make sure that you are finding them from legitimate sources, either people taking their own photos and putting, a lot of these are on Reddit, a lot of these are from nature sites, a lot of these are from conservatory museums and scientific websites. I try to avoid Pinterest unless I have the -AI filter on, just because you don't know what you're getting. And if you're not getting a real image, then it's actually not helping you. Right? So you want to make sure you get real images. Find real images of what you're drawing in context. So if I'm drawing a salamander, for example, or like a gecko or an amphibious creature, you can see that they have similarities to reptiles, right? Except if you look at geckos and amphibians, you can see that their paws are a little bit flatter. They have this sort of sticky material at the bottom, and sometimes they even have fingers on top of fingers. So look at this. These are the paws of a golden gecko from India. So this is what it looks like. It's kind of like the skin-colored creature, kind of small. But take a look at the feet. Isn't that crazy? Look at these feet. It looks like each individual finger has like 4 separate pads on it and a nail. So this is kind of what helps them stay sticky, right? So when you're designing a character, right, even if it's something like, like a gecko man, for example, somebody who can scale buildings, right? You want to make sure that you design their features, like their hands and their feet, so that they actually mirror the real animal. Always study from science. Always get your references from scientific sources. Those are the best ones that you could possibly get. Otherwise, take your own pictures. Right? So if you have a pet, or you have a friend who has a reptile, maybe you can ask them to send you some pictures. So a lot of these examples, this is a crocodile foot, right? So you can see crocodiles have very kind of fat fingers, fat feet, right? They're not very long. The fingers are very short. The scales are very big. And then you can see that they only have 3 claws. And then these 2 fingers don't even have claws, which is really weird. If I didn't take a closer look, I would never know. I would never know. You just assume every single finger has a claw, right? But that's not always the case. So make sure that you find really good references. Some of these are monitor lizards. This is a monitor lizard. And so I just went ahead and collected these references for you. If you want to join our Discord, I will post these references for you so that you don't have to find them yourself, and you can use this as a study sheet. Okay. Okay, so let's go in and let's do a little bit of sketching here. I'm just going to selectively turn some stuff off, and we can get started here. So the first thing that I wanted to show you guys is how close a lizard hand is to a human hand. Like, it's so close. It looks very similar, except one has these long claws, and then, we have fingertips with nails, right? But you can see the segments. It has the same amount of segments. So 1, 2, 3. And then this part is actually part of the bottom of the hand. So this is part of the palm of the hand. These are not fingers, but the palm of the hand structurally, like the skeleton, it actually looks like a little hand in itself, right? That's what gives you the flexibility, right? That's what helps you make your hand into a ball or into a fist. Right? So you can see it's the same thing. We have the same number of segments, right? Except instead of a fingertip, these lizards have a claw. Okay, so it's actually very, very similar. So let's start by breaking down how to draw these. And I'm just going to turn this stuff off to minimize distractions, and then we can get started. Okay. All right. So let's choose a nice pencil to sketch with. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to draw is actually let's try to sketch some of these paws in different directions, right? In different POVs. And then we can try figuring out how to draw these in a more easy way. So when I draw hands, like when I draw human hands, I will try to draw like the palm of the hand, like a piece of toast, like this, right? So within here, you're going to get the bones that are inside. So for example, you're going to have your bones, right, that are within this piece of toast. Okay, so these are the bones inside the hands, or your metacarpal bones. Okay. And then there's this little wedge here. This is the muscle that ties your thumb into the palm of your hand, and then this is the metacarpal of your thumb, right? It's in here. So there's this like little nacho chip shape. I'm just explaining to you how to draw a human hand, and then we're gonna turn it into a reptile hand because it's very similar, right? And then what I'll do is I will then draw out the shape of the hand, right? So I'll draw the shape of the hand like this, right? And then divide it into 3 sections. So then I have my pinky, and then ring finger, middle finger, index finger, and thumb, right? And then within the thumb itself, there are 2 bones, and then 3 bones. Basically, there's a small bone in here. These are called the distal phalanges, the small bones. And then you've got your proximal phalanges, which is the middle section, right? And then you have your proximal. Sorry, these are your middle. These are your distal. So D, middle, and then the bottom here are your proximal. So 3 segments in the fingers, and then 1 segment. These are the metacarpals on the bottom. Okay, so this is kind of like a really loose anatomical drawing of a human hand. Now, when we look at the monitor lizard, right? And like the reason why I break this down is because then if you want to turn this drawing into something that is more at the angle and the pose of this creature, you can kind of draw the whole palm as one form like this, right? It's like this. So now this is the piece of toast. Okay. And then you can see how the fingers bend. So our fingers bend in the opposite direction. So as the lizard, right? So you can see, for example, if I wanted to show where all the fingers come out, right? Then maybe one finger comes out here, then another attaches here, then we've got one more here, one more here, and then maybe this one attaches over here, right? Similar to a human hand. EJ Tune, hey, welcome in. Glad that this is your first live stream. Welcome. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm kind of drawing out this section, okay? And I'm gonna draw in like the individual fingers, but fit them into this overall form here. Okay, so I'm kind of like thinking about the overall structure of the hand and sort of breaking it up. Over here we've got one cylinder coming out this way. Right, so to like make it really easy, you can kind of think about how these fingers are attaching, right? How are these fingers attaching to the palm, right? Just think about them as cylinders. That's like the easiest way that you can think about them without complicating it too much. So just cylinders. Okay, and then you can see that the okay, so these are the proximal phalanges. The proximal phalanges. I'm going to label them as P. Okay, and then now I'm going to be drawing the middle phalanges. So the middle one is actually going up, right? The middle one is actually, let me just bring this layer up. If you can see, it's going like this. Right? You see the direction? So it's kind of going straight and then going up and then going back down, right? Whereas with human hands can also do that. Like flex your fingers and try to make this pose with your fingers, right? If you lift your knuckles, you could also make a pose like this, except our fingers we can't bend up. We can only bend down. Like you can bend up a little bit, but it's still very awkward, right? So that's the that's the main difference. So now what we're gonna do is draw out. We're gonna draw out those middle fingers. So what you can do is you can kind of like draw out a basic shape, right? Like just the shape of the claws and kind of where you think they'll end up. Maybe here, right? And then you can also draw like the gesture of it, kind of where you see it connecting. So it's going up and then coming down like this. And then the other claw might be going like this. Right, so I'm kind of drawing in the middle line of these gestures. Sorry, I'm drawing the gestures of the claws. Right? Almost looks like a little spider. Just so I don't get confused and I know which one is the middle. And then I will draw out the claws. So you can just go in and draw the claws as a cone shape, right? So you can put the claws in first. So the reason I'll draw the claws in first, and they're kind of floating like this, right, is because I can make a better judgment call to see, you know, where everything needs to go before I draw in the middle, right? I can kind of see where I want to place the claws first. So I'll draw the claws in first, like this. Right? This one, I think, actually goes out this way, and then we can start to make the connection here. And this one goes like this and attaches this way. There are some overlaps that are a little bit tricky to deal with. So just draw everything together and then you can start to erase, right? So that you don't lose yourself. You don't lose the drawing in the process. So there we go. And even though it's helpful to know the anatomy and all of that, it's actually better when you're just starting out to really study the structure of it, because when you know how to draw structure, then you'll be able to make this stuff up out of your head much more easily in the future. Right? So just cylinders attaching together. Okay. Hands and claws are basically spiders, but with less legs. Yeah. That is a good observation. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, if you can figure out the structure, right, as cylinders, that's really all you need. You don't really need to know the anatomical terms. You don't really need to know, you know, all of those other details. All you really need to know are how many bones or how many joints do I need to think about? Which direction do the joints turn in, right? And then just go from there. So once you have this type of structure drawing down, right, then you can start to draw in the rest. You can start to draw in the skin. So what you can do here is, let's say I make a new layer. I'm just going to turn my drawing down, right? And if you have trouble with the structure, then I would say just focus on the structure drawing, right? Don't even worry too much about getting the rest of the details in if you're actually struggling with the structure drawing itself, right? Because that is really the most important step, is to understand the anatomy and how it all works together, right? So for example, there's loose skin here that is connecting the bones together, right? And then once you know where everything goes, then it becomes a lot easier to place everything. Then you can make the claws larger, smaller, right? Then you can adjust the hand proportions. So if you're drawing, you know, let's say designing two characters and they're both lizards, but one is a little cuter and one is a little bit more aggressive, right? Then you can just, the structure can stay the same, but you can adjust some of the lines and some of the, you know, the proportions to make your character more cute, more scary, younger, older. A lot of these principles will stay basically will stay true to your original structure, right? But you can make better decisions when they're based off of science. You have sleepy brain? That's okay. That's okay. I've had 2 cups of coffee this morning, so I'm all ready to go. I think a lot of the times when we're drawing, you know, lizard feet or reptiles, and we're not super familiar with them, right? What we tend to do is we get lost in the details. Let me know if this is you, okay? Because this is certainly me. I get really lost in the details. I'm like, oh, drawing all the scales. I'm sort of losing sight of the big picture because I'm overwhelmed by all of the details and all of the squiggly lines and the, you know, the texture and all of this, right? And what ends up happening is I draw in all the details, but I end up losing the structure a little bit. And that is actually the most important part is the structure, right? Because when you know the cylinders go a certain way, then you know that the scales, right, are going to follow that cylinder, right? You know that the scales, you know which way they're going to curve, right? You know all of those details to begin with. So that will make things a lot easier, especially if you're drawing folds or you're going to add texture later on. Super, super important. So you can see I'm kind of like reinforcing the curves of the cylinders so that later on I can put scales on as needed. Right? And same thing with the hand, right? If I just kind of like, if I can imagine, let me just turn this drawing off for a second. If I can imagine the metacarpals, right, and how they work, and I want to draw them in, for example, like this, right? So let's say these are the metacarpals, right? Then if I know how that works, then in my sketch, I can draw these scales according to how these work. Do you know what I mean? So like I know which part is supposed to be bumpy and which part is supposed to be saggy just based on where the bones are in the hand. And I can make much better decisions when I'm drawing scales. So if I turn off, you know, if I turn off the actual structure, right, I can still feel the form underneath. Like this. Little kitty, you're writing a book with anthropomorphic characters. That's awesome. I love it. Hopefully this helps you. We're going to go into how to draw feline paws after this. So, okay, so there's one claw for you. If you guys just joined or missed the first part of it, basically we started off with a structure drawing, right? We started off by analyzing the human hand, how it differs from reptile hands, and then drawing the lines afterwards, right? So starting with structure and then drawing the lines. So then when you turn off the structure drawing, right, everything still feels like it works, right? And I can still kind of like follow some of these lines. I can still feel the anatomy underneath it, even though I didn't explicitly draw anything, right? All right. Okay, you love to draw cats and reptiles. Okay, then I guess that you are in the right place. Okay, so we're gonna do one more. This one actually only has 4 fingers. Okay, so we're just gonna base it off of what we know about human hands and do a similar type of structure drawing. Okay, let me see all of these other references I have. And then this one is pretty straightforward. This one is a pretty relaxed pose. So I think the poses that are harder are the ones that are, you know, on the ground or gripping something. You know, they have a little bit more action. So now let's draw the opposite hand. and follow the same type of format. This one though, we're gonna go into the GSL method, so I can show you how it can apply to lizard hands as well. Okay, so in terms of the GSL method, it's really just drawing in the gesture first. Okay, so what is the feeling? What is the overall gesture of the hand? You know, what are the fingers doing? You know, what is the overall shape of the claw, right? What's the overall sort of action of the claw, right? So this might be the gesture, and then this flows right into this claw. Okay, so I'm really drawing in the movement and prioritizing movement first. And then after the gesture, I'm gonna start to draw in the shape. So I'm just gonna use a different color for the shape. Let's use a green. Okay, so next I'm gonna start to draw in the shapes that I see. So shapes could also be forms, right? So remember, shapes are 2D, but if you can draw in 3D, that's even better. So shape-wise, let's start off with shapes first, and then we can make them into 3D if it's easier. So I can kind of see a oval shape here for the top of the arm, and then I kind of see a square, like a square shape for the palm, and then I see I'm going to draw the overall shape, like the overall shape of the claw. And the reason why I'm drawing the overall shape is because it's easier for me to draw the overall shape and then find the negative space between the claws. Like, for example, negative space would be here. This would be negative space, right? This would be negative space. Okay, so by shape, you're finding negative space. And then you're also looking for forms. Okay, so negative space is sometimes way easier to find than positive space, right? So then you can help yourself by just drawing in those negative spaces to help make room for the forms. Okay, so let's say I've got right, so there's my space, and then next I'm gonna draw forms. So with forms, I'm going to draw in a cylinder. So now this is a cylinder. And then this is actually a rectangular prism. And you can see that this process is kind of messy, right? It's definitely not a sort of super easy method, because you're breaking down each step into different stages, right? Let me catch up with the chat. Could you write out the list of steps that you followed to form the claw? Yeah. These are the list of steps. So I'm starting off with the gesture to draw the movement. And then I'm finding the shape. So what are the 2D shapes that I see? And then finding the negative space. And now I'm going to draw the forms. Okay, now I'm going to draw the forms. So let me just move this. I'm going to move it to my other layer here. Okay, once you have your negative space drawn out, then you can start to draw out the forms. Okay, so just naming everything. Make sure I don't get lost. Okay, so now I'm going to draw the structure. I kind of started off in green, but I feel like it might be easier to do it as a separate step. So now I'm going to draw in the forms. So this is going to be the structure. So structure-wise, I see the piece of toast, like we talked about in the hand, right? There's a piece of toast. And then you can kind of figure out where are the fingers coming out of, right? There's one, and then there's almost like the front of the piece of toast looks like this. And then there's like, right, different parts where the claws are coming out of. Remember that the thumb, right, that the metacarpal on the thumb is kind of going in a different direction. So in this case, right, it would kind of be coming from over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can start to draw in the cylinders. Make sure that you draw the tops and bottoms of the cylinders so that you know exactly how to draw the scales later on, right? When everything's turning. So now we're gonna go up like this. And then here's the first claw. This one is going pretty straight. You can also see the fingers get a little bit bigger, right? They get a little bit wider as they move towards the claw, which is different than human fingers. Human fingers get thinner. So this one is kind of foreshortened because the paw is, or the claw is like coming right at us. So it's like this, right? And yeah, it's a tiny piece of toast. Tiny piece of toast. Toast and sausages. Yeah, you can think of them as sausages. You can see that the hand is very flat, right? The hand here is very flat. And then the arm, right, gets kind of, the arm gets a little bit thicker. So it's almost like the wrist is also kind of flat here. And then the arm is significantly thicker. So it's like this big barrel shape here, right? And it's kind of going in this direction. Okay, so if you can draw the structure, if you can draw the structure, then you can draw anything. If you can draw the structure, you can draw the details. Don't draw the details before knowing the structure, because then you don't actually know if the details are even complementing the structure or if they are confusing the structure, right? And a lot of the times we confuse the structure by adding details prematurely without actually figuring out what the details look like first, right? Okay, so if you're following along with me, now what we can do is reduce the opacity, right, of this claw, then go back to your drawing. And now we can do those nice outlines, right? Those beautiful outlines that we always tend to do first. So, so this is where you can start to draw in your scales, right? If you do have scales and you want to like maybe draw the outside so that it has a little bit of texture, right? Now you actually know how to add the individual texture because you know the direction that the cylinder is going in, right? And you can even start to put in some of these, the bottoms of those scales, right? And you can see the scales get a lot smaller here, and then you can start to add the lines. Make sure that you're drawing in those overlaps. I actually recently visited Mexico and I was in Cancun and I saw these iguanas. They were just kind of roaming around wild everywhere. And I'm not a huge fan of lizards. They kind of scare me. These guys were huge. They were like, oh my goodness, like 2-3 feet long, including the tail. And they were just wandering around, like just chilling. And it took a lot of courage for me to go up and like really look at them and take some good pictures. And one time I got a little bit too close and it started kind of like pumping its neck at me. And almost, they don't hiss, but they kind of open their mouth and silent scream. But yeah, they're interesting creatures. Some of you guys have asked, like, how do you draw scales, right? Like, how do you actually draw in scales? And I would just say, like, you don't have to draw all of them. You can just draw in some of them. And the best way to draw scales is to actually know which direction the cylinders are facing so that you can make them feel like they're going in the right perspective, right? So I'm going to draw some details here, but I would say you don't have to draw all of the scales. You can just suggest the most important ones. Right? You can just suggest the ones maybe that are a little bit closer to the outside, closer to the viewer, right? Maybe like along the top here, you could add some details. But really, texture is not as important as structure. And then here, if you wanted to, as part of your forms, you can start to put in like where you think the scales would actually align, right? And then like where the metacarpals are. So if you divide out the metacarpals, then you can draw them out in the drawing, right? Then you can like add scales maybe a little bit more strategically. right? And there's like brushes that you can use to make scales. You don't have to do all of this by hand. I am doing it by hand so that the people who are drawing traditionally, who don't really have just like digital brushes that they could rely on, can also do this, right? So I'm going to turn off those 2 layers, and you can see I've drawn in a little bit of the scales. Yeah, Kelzoon, if you have a tutorial that you want to link in the Discord for sure, definitely share it. This, you know, you know what? When you say, you know, little kitty, don't you hate it when you picture this amazing character, hair, drawing, etc., then it's not as good as in your mind. I think that's definitely a common struggle for a lot of artists, that, you know, we can imagine all of these traits on the character, but then when it comes to drawing them, it becomes really, really difficult. And it mostly comes down to research, right? Just being able to have a better idea of what our character is really based on. And like you really have to do your research, right? Because there's only so much that you can draw out of your head. I think the rest comes down to filling in those gaps, right? Like what are some of the things that you're having trouble imagining? What are some of the things that you could supplement by doing some studies, right? These are all ways that you could work on improving your character. If I wanted to go into a little bit more detail, I can just start to render in the claws, just so I have like a light source. The other thing I would probably render out here is the shadow, right? Because the shadow gives you a really, really nice idea of where the light source is. So I'm going to create a different layer for my shadow and just show you quickly how you can shade. When you have the forms, right? When you have the forms underneath, shading becomes really easy, actually. So if I wanted to draw a shadow, let me just find a textured brush. Yeah, so I'm just going to use a textured brush here. I just don't like the look of digital shading as much, so I tend to prefer textured brushes. But let's say that you wanted to give your reptile, right, a little bit of shading. Right, you can basically just follow the structure, right? You can follow the boxes that you drew here, right? And then you can start to give each of these fingers, each of these cylinders, a little bit of shading, and go up like this. Like this. Right? You can notice how it follows your original structure. So when you know how to look for structure, it helps you with everything. It helps you with shading as well, right? And then there you can make it feel solid with just a very big brush. Just Catching up with chat. Will we ever draw snakes? We have actually a snake tutorial on School. If you want to join our School, I believe Arunya did a snake tutorial for the Lunar New Year. So it's in our learning community. It's a paid community, but I'm pretty sure we've drawn snakes we've drawn a snake character in a stream a long time ago. So yes. Snakes are just cylinders, right? So if you can draw cylinders and put them together, then and draw scales, it's very similar to this. Yay. Little Kitty says, I'm trying to make a character with hair, but every time I try drawing the hair on him, he doesn't look like the character I thought he would look like. I think that's okay. I think it just also comes down to studying parts of the process that, like figuring out which parts of the process you struggle with, and then doing studies, right? Most of the time it's research. 99% of the times when I'm working with our students, either one-on-one or in a group, and they're trying to draw something, I always ask them, oh, did you find a reference? And most of the time they're like, no, I couldn't find a reference, or no, I actually didn't actually look for a reference, or I can't find the perfect reference. And I'm always like, aha, well, there's your problem. It's really just like, it comes down to not having a good reference most of the time. So I would say start there. Right, try to find, you can find style references, you can find anatomical references, right? References for every type of problem. There we go. There's the shadow. And I think I'm going to lighten up that shadow a little bit. Yeah, so there you go. We've drawn some lizard hands. You can apply these to dragons, you can apply them to dinosaurs, you can apply them to a whole bunch of different creatures. All right. And let me know if you guys have any questions about dragon hands. Or lizards, I guess I should say. You know what? Dinosaurs and dragons, you can also study birds. Like bird talons are super, super worth studying. They're really, really similar in anatomy to birds. Yeah, exactly. You can draw bird talons the exact same way. Like exactly the same process as we did here. Just, you know, bird talons, they don't really have the piece of toast. They don't have the metacarpals that we have in the palm of our hand. It's a lot more bare bones. So all right. So guys, before we move on to drawing paws on cats, I want to share our monthly challenge. So this month's challenge is fundamental 3D forms. Fundamental 3D forms. And guess what? We're using the same fundamentals to draw our lizard hands. So you can submit your lizard hands to the challenge this month. And if you do submit your artwork, you would get a chance to be featured on the streams. So yeah, try it out this month. Try really going back to fundamentals and seeing how you can use 3D forms to improve your work. And we would love to see your artwork on the Discord, or you can share it to our Instagram at Wing Canvas, and we would love to cheer you on. All right, paws. Let's do this. Let's go. Let's move on to some furry paws. Uh, okay, so we're gonna switch gears and let's see here. Cat paws. Woo! All right. Do you guys have a cat? Let me know if you're a cat. Or if you have a cat, I should say. If you are a cat. Some of you guys might be cats. But I used to have a cat. She passed away, but her name was Helvetica, and she was adorable. And I used to play with her paws all the time. All the time. Oh, little kitty, of course you have a cat. Her name is Lola. Hello, Lola. And I guess you're a cat as well. So if what I really like about cats, and one thing that cats have that dogs don't, is they have these like retractable claws that can make them go from like looking like this cute, adorable bunny, right? With like, it's so non-threatening. Like it looks so cute and fluffy and, you know, non-aggressive at all. And then they can go to like this, to this, you know, really freaky kind of, like very, almost like web-like, right? Web-like with these nails, these claws that just kind of come out of nowhere. So cats have an amazing ability to retract their claws. So this is actually from the website cat-world.com, where I was doing some research this morning and learning about how, like why cats' paws do that, right? Why how their paws actually stretch out, how they can retract their paws and also flex their claws, right? And how it can go from really cute and non-threatening to kind of scary and tiger-like. So, yeah, so let's do some studies now of both the kind of cute, you know, non-threatening paw to this type of, you know, hunting killer instinct type of paw, right? With the retracted claws. I am more of a dog person myself, Marushard, for sure. I was very lucky to have a really, really well-mannered cat. My cat never clawed me. Even when I tried to bathe it, it was always very, very gentle. And I never had her declawed. I think that's inhumane, but I mean, I understand that some cats do scratch up all your furniture, right? And they can be, some of them are more aggressive than others. But let's have a look at cat paws here. Like, here's an example of a human hand and a cat paw, right? So what are some of the differences that we see here? It's always really helpful to compare animals to humans because we have hands, we know how they work, right? So sometimes we need to kind of like look at the skeleton and think about how it would function, right? How it differs from our own hands so that we can know when we draw what to highlight, right? What to play up and what to sort of play down. So yeah, cats can switch up so fast, right? One moment they're angels, then the next they're treating you like their personal scratching post. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They're very unpredictable. Okay, so you can, for example, you can probably see here that cats have much longer metacarpals than humans do. Our metacarpals, just to remind you, are the bones that are in our palms. Okay, the phalanges are the bones that are in your fingers. The metacarpals are the bones that are in your palm. So if you look at the human hand here, you can probably see that the grab my brush here. So you can see that the metacarpals on the human hand are this big. So on a piece of toast, we're going to go back to the piece of toast, the nacho chip. Okay, so there's it is on the human hand. On cat paws, they're much longer, right? So they're kind of like much longer in shape. So it goes from a piece of toast to like a coffin shape. Not to be morbid, but it you can see that the structure, the shape changes a lot, right? And take note of these shapes, right? Take note of how they differ. So on a human hand, again, it's more like this, right? And on a cat paw, it's more long, a lot longer. So like this. Okay. And then if we look at the phalanges, so let's go from bottom up, right? So we're going to look at the proximal phalanges, which are these bones here, right? The proximal phalanges. Okay. And then the thumb doesn't actually have a middle phalange. So the thumb only has the proximal and the distal phalange. So this, I'm going to label this as okay, so these are the metacarpals. These are the proximal phalanges. And then these are the distal phalanges. Okay. And then these on the human hand, these are the middle phalanges. I think they're called middle. Yeah, middle phalanges, proximal phalanges. And then these are the distal phalanges. Okay. And you can see these alignment lines that I drew in just so you can kind of see where the bones start and where they end. It helps me with proportions a lot to kind of like draw in these alignment lines, right? So that I know where things align. So for example, the top of the proximal phalange of the thumb, right, is aligned with the metacarpal of the hand. Right, so this alignment here is very important for human hands. And you can see for cat hands or cat paws, right, if I extended the top of the metacarpals, you can see that it's actually a lot higher than the thumb, right? Or the dew, I guess on cats it's called the dew claw. So yeah, this is kind of how you measure stuff out and compare. So on cats, you can see, let me just pull up the cat anatomy here. Oh, I want to show you something really cool. This is from 3danatomystudios.com. Thank you, 3danatomystudios.com, for actually creating this really, really cool example of a cat's front paw versus a human hand, right? You can kind of see it's very, very similar, but can you guys see the claws at the top? Can you guys see how the claws are kind of like retracted, right? They fold up. They are retracted. So instead of like on humans, how we have the distal phalanges or our fingertips For cats, the fingertips are actually retracted and they kind of go the opposite way, right? They kind of sit up and they're ready to sort of, they're ready to pounce at any time. So I thought this was really, really cool. It gives you a really interesting look, or 3D look at how the paws actually differ from human hands, right? Super, super cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna put this in the chat. There we go, just in case you want to take a look later. Okay. So it's a little bit hard to see in this x-ray, right? So just to complete our analysis, we're gonna start to draw the middle phalanges on the cat. So the middle phalanges are here. And then these are the metacarpals. Okay, and then because it's a little bit hard to see in this x-ray, the other phalanges, the middle phalanges, are kind of going backwards, and then the claws are retracted, right? So it's a little bit hard to see, but the top of the cat's paws are here, and then within it there are 2 segments, right? It's a little bit easier to see up at the top, but basically this is what makes the cat's paws kind of do this, right? It's like this, and then the nails are kind of on top of the middle phalanges. So it's like this. Do that again. There's a bunch of like wrist bones down here. You don't really need to know about them. You just kind of have to draw them in as a shape, right? Same thing with our hands. We have a bunch of like wrist bones in here. Okay, and then our fingers are like this. Okay. So we're going to use a very, very similar process for what we did with the lizards, and we're going to do it with the cats. Okay, but first I wanted to talk about the skeletal structure so that we understand what we're dealing with. Here's also a side view. So the side view here for the metacarpals, as you can see, like the metacarpals are here, right? This is the longest part of the bone, the metacarpal, and then this is the actually no, they're all phalanges. So this one's mislabeled. Metacarpal would actually be here. Metacarpal would be here, so this is the middle. One second. No, that's the proximal. Sorry. This is the proximal phalange. This is the middle one, and then this is the distal here, which is also the claw. So it's actually this whole part here. Okay, that comes out. So that's the claw, and then this is the distal. So it actually does this. Whereas on human fingers do this, right? We can't actually bend our fingers backwards, right? human fingers do this, right? Whereas cat fingers, they do this. So long cylinder here, and then middle, and then there's one that does this with the claw. Proximal, middle, distal. Okay. And then this becomes proximal, middle, and then there's this like weird bone that's shaped like this that has a claw attached to it. So it's like this. So this is retracted. Proximal, middle, distal. Where do you submit the drawing in the Discord for the 3D challenge? In the Art Challenges channel. Yes, thank you, Darren. Okay, so you guys thought we'd be drawing paws, but here we are drawing cylinders and doing some anatomy studies. It's really important for us, like if you guys are designing a cat character, right? It's important to actually know how the cat character is going to express themselves if they have paws. It's important to know, you know, if you want the character to look aggressive, that their paws are going to be flexed a little bit. So I think this is all really really good to study if you've never done it before, right? If you've never drawn cats before, right? It's really important to study the anatomy, like going back to the bones and comparing them with how human hands look. Okay. So what I think we could do, I thought that this image here at the top was really good because you can kind of draw the paws from a top view and a bottom view. And it's pretty easy, guys, to draw paws like this, right? To draw the cutesy paws. So I'm not gonna go over how to draw those because I think you guys already know how to draw them. We're gonna draw the ones that are flexed. Okay, so we're gonna draw, like, for example, we can draw this cat here if we have time, but I want to really study these paws first, right? So here's a cat just casually stretching, remembering that they have claws. And I thought this would be a really cool one to study. Okay. All right, let's do this. So, make some room here. Oh, look at that paw. That one was hidden underneath. So let's do this. Let's mirror it horizontally, and then let's draw these claws first. So before we do that, I'm going to take these drawings here and let's move them up. And we're gonna, I'm gonna remember this this anatomy here. I'm not gonna move it. I'm just gonna use this. Okay. You know what? I am going to take this part. And I'm gonna move it up so that I have a better reference for proportions. There we go. And I'll give you guys all my notes. If you want to join the Discord, I'll be posting all of my notes on there after the stream so that we can so that you guys can use this as a reference moving forward. I'm gonna actually cut out the human finger because it's a little confusing. So let's just keep the cat's paws. There we go. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw out the forms. So very similar to what we did before. We're going to start by drawing out, let me just merge these two layers. Okay, we're going to start by drawing out the structure first. Okay, so first of all, I'll start off with the gesture. And I'm just going to make my reference a little smaller. Okay. I love it when my cat stretches. She's super cute. Okay, so gesture-wise, you can probably just kind of draw out the outside of the paws, like this. Right? Just like really focusing on rhythm and movement, right? And kind of like, there's the overall gesture. And then now let's look for shapes. So knowing what I know about cat paws, I'm going to assume that I can really just see the phalanges, right? The phalanges are going to be here. They're pretty long, right? And like, I would have not known what shape to, sorry, I said phalanges. This is the metacarpal. I'm getting my terms mixed up. The metacarpals are the bones within the palm. And so in this case, it's like what makes up most of the paw from the back. And you can see I'm going off of the shape that I had researched, right? So it almost looks more like a foot than it does a hand, right? And then the middle, then we have the proximal phalanges. So the proximal ones are the ones that you can actually see. So they're kind of like here. Proximal. And then the middle and the distal phalanges. So the distal phalange would be here. You can start seeing them. So now this is where I can get my negative space figured out. So you can also only see 4 of them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. The other one, the dew claw, is actually back here, right? So it's a little bit harder to see. It's closer to the bottom, so you can't even see it in this view. So they look like 2 little feet right now. They look like feet. And then the nails. or the claws. Right? It's just kind of, it's more important to kind of know where they start and end. Okay. And now we can start drawing in the forms. So you guys don't need to draw forms for things that are super furry because, I mean, you can, but you don't need to. It's when we're drawing lizards, right? It's a lot more relevant to draw the forms because you can see everything, right? There's skin, just like humans. You can see everything. But like, for example, you can't really you can't really see all of the details when there's fur. So sometimes you can just stop at the shape phase. You don't even need to draw the forms. But it's up to you, right? Like if drawing the forms will help you with things like shading, then definitely draw those forms, right? So it's really up to you. If drawing forms is confusing, then it might be better just to draw the shapes, right? Because that can work as well. And that might actually be easier for most beginners. And I see a lot of beginners, like they will tend to want to draw form, like prioritize form, but get really lost and sometimes not really draw the shapes of things. So I think it's important to actually draw shapes as well, and even maybe prioritize shapes even more than forms. Because ultimately you can do both, but the forms are much harder. So don't let that stop you, right? Just draw in shapes. You can kind of see where the dew claw is. Yeah, it's like back here, I think. It's a little hard to see. Yeah, shapes then form. Exactly. Sometimes the form is really obvious, right? Sometimes like it's so easy to see, but a lot of the times, like when you're drawing furry paws and furry characters, it can be really hard to see. So sometimes shapes are fine. You don't really need to get super complicated with it. Okay, so we're gonna draw front and back. See, once you have a line, right, then you can start to imply the fur. So lots of fur there. Okay. And now I can turn off the GS layer, and then you can kind of see what the forms and the line look like, right? What the shapes look like. If you want to really think about forms, right, you can, for example, the forms that are really easy to see are the forms of the arm on the cat, right? You can kind of see that it does this, and then there's like a kind of like a step, right? And then there's like another step here where it starts to get a little bit bigger, right? And then the individual paws, like the individual fingers, right? So that way you can kind of see, all right, the lighting's coming from above. So that means that everything below it, right, when it actually comes to shading stuff, it becomes a lot easier to shade because you know, okay, there's the lights coming from above, right? And then this part is going this way. So forms are really helpful for shading, and you can start to see those forms, right? You can start to see the cylinders when it comes time to shade them, right? But like if you're not shading, then shapes are probably a little bit more easy to think about. But the forms allow you to shade stuff out of your head, right? A lot easier. So yeah, if you wanted to go a little bit deeper into the structure, you can always study. You can study hairless cats. Hairless cats, their paws are really creepy, but you can study those if you want to really get into the structure, get into all of the details. So. I came across a couple of those and I was like, oh, they're way too creepy. I don't want it. I'd rather draw a furry cat. So, hairless cats? Yeah, hairless cats are so scary. They're so creepy looking. I'm just going to start to add some rough shading to this. Right? When I have some rough shading down, I kind of know what the overall structure is like. But here, even with shading, you can just follow the form, right? You can see like, oh, okay. The shape of the claw, right? Like what is the shape that's in shadow right now? And then just draw that out. You don't really need to worry too much about the exact forms underneath all this fur. There we go. And then I'm going to erase all these lines because you don't need them. You can feel the softness of it without it. Okay. You're probably noticing that I'm using a very big brush as well. I like really big brushes. I find that they help me get things done much faster. Yeah, I've always wanted to pet a hairless cat. But I actually have never met anybody who owns one or who actually has a hairless cat, so I've never had the opportunity. But I don't know why. Without fur, they just look kind of mean. They look kind of evil. I know it's not fair to judge a cat for or their personality for, just because they don't have fur. But maybe it's all the movies that I've seen where they make the hairless cats the evil ones. Maybe that's where my judgment of these creatures comes from. Okay, the ways to draw fur. So With fur, I would not suggest drawing all of the fur individually because that's gonna take forever. And it's probably not the best approach to begin with. So I would say if you're trying to get fur, or the feeling of fur, is just to shade it according to the shapes that you see. And then you can start to suggest fur by, let's see, like for example, you can erase some of these lines, right? And then you can go back in with like a thin brush, and then you can start to add, you know, just a little bit of fur here and there to help it feel a bit more realistic. But you don't need to add it everywhere, right? A lot of the times less is more. You could also take one of those textured brushes, like something like this, right? You see how it has like a nice texture? And then you can kind of go in and add some, or even use it as an eraser. You use it as an eraser, you can start to remove some of the lines, right? And then start to kind of get that fuzzy feeling, right? So you can add and remove using these brushes. And Josh has an amazing KRITA video. I'm using KRITA for this demo. It's a free software and it's open source, so it's amazing. If you haven't used it, if you're looking for a digital art program, you can give it a try. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but it has some pretty awesome default brushes. I've never bought a brush on KRITA, and I think it's pretty great that these default brushes can perform really, really well. So you can watch Josh's video on KRITA brushes if you want his top recommendations. It was a recent video that we made. All right. So there we go. We got some fur without overdoing it, without over rendering the stuff, right? And we got really what we needed. I don't really suggest outlining the claws like I did. I was just drawing them really quickly. So let's make the claws feel a little bit more natural. So they're actually white. I made them black. There we go. Sometimes just removing the line will help. Okay. I do a lot of, maybe because I'm more of a traditional artist, but I will add and remove stuff all the time. So, you know, I'll draw a line and then I will look at erasing it if I think that it helps the narrative. You observe animals a lot, maybe a bit too much. That's good. That is not a bad thing at all. Observe. It is the best thing that you can do as an artist, is just observe more. Observe more and study as much as you can. All right, now we can draw these retractable claws from the bottom. We drew them from the top. so now let me remove this reference here, and then we can draw them from the bottom. All right. And I'm gonna move this over. There we go. Now let's draw the bottom. So same exercise here, right? I'm just going to move this over. All right, so I don't know if it's this is the same cat, but it happens to be the same color and the same pose. So maybe it is the same cat. Okay, we're gonna start by drawing out the gesture lines. Right. And again, the gesture is not too important here. It's more just to get the movement right. Little kitty, you're welcome. Thanks for joining. I hope to catch you on the stream, on a different stream. And yeah, join our Discord. I'd love to see your creations. Okay, so next up we have this cat where you can actually see a lot more of the anatomy on the bottom. So first of all, let's draw out the shape, right? So we have this kind of, it's almost like a it's like a pentagon shape of the paw here, right? And this is kind of like the pad at the bottom, and then the individual paws here. Right, like drawing these out because these are individual shapes, right? They're like legitimate shapes. There's like a little pad there, and then the dew claw is actually here, right? So then let's draw the rest of the paw. There's the dew claw. 2, 3, 4. Okay. Here are the wrists. And then same thing here. So here I can see a bit more structure. Let me know if you guys can see it. It's kind of facing a different direction, right? So you can see the full box. Like this. And you can see the pad here like this. And you can draw in like the individual fingers. Like this. So you can see, like, you can cartoonify it for yourself, right? By just like finding the placement of things, right? Before you actually go into all the details. And it's weird that the pad looks kind of like a nose. Do you guys see that? It looks like a nose. It's weird looking. I've had a cat for 10 years and I don't think I've actually studied paws to this extent. So thank you guys for requesting this topic. I think it's been long overdue. Okay, there we go. So looking at this almost looks like webbed feet. It doesn't look very cat-like at the moment, right? Yeah, you can definitely see the dew claws here for sure, right? They're kind of like on the side, and much lower than where our thumbs are. Oh, Kelzoon, you're welcome. My pleasure. Okay, so now let's draw the forms. So I kind of drew for a form here because it was very obvious to me, right? I can see that structure. Whereas on the one on the top, I can't really see it. I can only base it off of the shapes that I see. So draw whatever you can, like use the most, use the process that makes the most sense for you, right? Like if you can't see something, then don't force yourself to draw it. Just draw shapes. If you can't see the forms, just draw shapes, right? That's it. Don't make things hard for yourself. Do what you can. And then now once you're in the forms phase, I can lighten that a little bit. Now, like you can start to draw in some of the fur. Right? And because I already have a map, sort of, right? I can get more detailed, right? So this isn't actually forms now. This is more like lines. This is more like the final stage, right? Where you can see the individual paws or the pads of the fingers. Right, even though most of it is covered in fur, but you can see like the structure a lot better from the bottom. Whoops. Like that. And then this weird nose thing. I can't unsee this now. It's like now that I see it as a nose, I'm always gonna see it as a nose. Super weird. I really want to draw nostrils on it now. Like oh, weird. All right, there we go. Yeah, if you have a cat, look for the nose under her paw or their paw. Okay? Tell me if you can see the nose shape, or if it's just this cat. Now I'm wondering. Maybe it's just the lighting, but that was really funny. Okay, you can notice like where is the thinnest part of the paw, where is the thickest part of the paw. How does it connect? What angle does it connect at? These are all good questions for when you're observing stuff. Because if you get the structure right, if you get all of the anatomy right, then it's just so much easier. Then you can confidently draw your lines without guessing, right? Because a lot of the times when I critique artwork, like from our community members or from our students, I can kind of see the areas where the lines are not as confident. And I can almost always like safely say that it's the lines are not confident because there's not enough information. There's not enough research being done or a reference being used, right? And I'm not saying you have to use references for everything. There are some things that you can probably draw pretty easily without using a reference. But when it comes time to, like, when you notice that there are certain things that are really difficult to draw, or that always, like, it always looks better in your head than in the actual drawing, that's when you probably want to look for a reference or just do some studies like this, right? After you study paws like this and you've drawn a couple, like, it takes a couple hours to do, but then you're going to have a much better understanding of how paws actually work, right? And then you'll be able to draw it a lot more confidently because you have that knowledge. You've studied the anatomy. Unfortunately, there's no real shortcuts with this type of drawing. And my best advice would be just to do more of them. Have I seen cat paws without the fur? They look alien. Yeah. Welcome, Jack fell down. Yes, I have. While I was doing research, I found some hairless cats and they gave me the creeps. I mean, I know they're still cats, just without the fur. And I don't want to judge them, but they're really scary looking. They're scary. Really, really scary looking. And we already drew lizard paws in the beginning of this stream, so I wanted to draw some furry paws for you guys. But yes, it would probably make sense to study the anatomy of hairless cats, but then you would have to study how to draw fur, right, in between the paws. So definitely worth studying if you can stomach it. But they scare me. They legitimately scare me. Okay, so now that I have the drawing, I'm going to turn off my structure layer, right? So you can see how once you have your structure, then you can make much better decisions about where you want to put your lines, where what is going to complement your drawing, right? And what's going to complicate your drawing. So you don't want to complicate, right? You want to simplify and complement. So what I mean by complement is, for example, you want to be able to serve the story first, right? You don't want complexity. You don't want confusion. Anytime you have confusion, that's bad. That adds to complexity, and it adds to the user or the viewer being confused, right? So less is more, in the sense that you always want to simplify and complement. Yeah, definitely harder to draw than the other side, so I appreciate it. Okay, do you guys want to see some shading? If you want me to shade this, let's see, we've got about 10 minutes left. I'll show you the fastest way that I shade, and you've probably seen this already if you've been following this stream, but basically what I do to shade is I will just take like a charcoal brush, or a brush that has some more texture to it. I believe this is called Chalk Grainy. So this is one of Josh's picks as well as my picks. I love this brush. If you look at it real big, you can kind of see that It mimics texture, paper texture. So it has a really nice quality to it, especially for shading fur, right? So I'm not going to add too much shading to this, just like a little bit, because the lighting is pretty subtle here. You know what? I should do this on a separate layer, just so I don't lose my line art. Let me do this on a separate layer. Okay. So I'm basically going to give everything a little bit of color. And then I'm going to erase. Right, I can erase some of the light over here. Get rid of some of the parts that look a little bit translucent. Right, with the hair coming, like, because the fur is soft, right, there's kind of light coming through on either side. And so that could be potentially confusing. So I'm trying to like lessen the confusion by just giving everything a dark tone to begin with. Right, and then adding a bit of texture. There we go. And the same thing with the other one, get real big. And the other one, you can see that there is a very clear cylinder, very clear form happening here, right? Not like the other one. The other one, the lighting is a little bit ambiguous. It's kind of like not as clear as the one on the bottom. So I'm trying to shade so that you guys at home could also shade in this way. This is not like a digital technique per se. This is more like how I would shade even if I was shading traditionally, trying to go for realistic textures instead of like a more kind of cartoony line art look. This is more of a more realistic look. Yeah, I still color on the wrong layer. What you can actually do is if it's too late to undo, you know, all the way, you could just like lasso it out and put it on another layer, or just copy it and keep working on it so that you have a copy. And then again, you can take that textured brush that I showed you guys. This brush, this one is called, let's see, if I hover over it, dry brushing. Yeah, dry brushing is a great brush because you know, you can use it as an eraser. So for example, you can add some texture right at the transition, like the transition parts, right? You can add some of the fur, give it a little bit more texture. right? For example, it has like a scratchiness, and then you can use it as an eraser. So just press E if you're on KRITA. You can just like flip your brush into an eraser, and you can start erasing some of those edges and getting your fur texture back. Right, and then you might want to lighten up those lines depending on how realistic you want to go. But this is a really easy way to imply texture and to shade without it being too much work, like without it having to draw all the individual hairs, right? Which would take forever. Yeah, so there we go. We got 2 paws. We have the paws on either side, one that is extended from the bottom and one from the top. Hey Elise, the brush name also shows on the bottom left corner. Oh, that is true. Down here. Good tip. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks for the tip. All right, guys. Well, that's it for Paws and Claws. I hope that I answered some of your questions and that you can try this exercise on your own. If you want to join the Discord, I will be putting the references, all of the references that I sourced in the beginning for you there, as well as my demos so that you can see my exact process. And if you want to try this for yourself, you can join the Discord and post your drawings in the monthly challenge, because this month our challenge is fundamental forms. And so if you can break down paws into forms, then you can get a chance to be featured on our stream. So again, I will be putting all of these references on the Discord for you, and you can take them and you can do your own style studies with them. Yeah, I love KRITA too, at least. It's so good. It took me a long time to actually learn it because, you know, I started off using Photoshop, then I used Medibang because we were teaching with it, and KRITA, I actually like KRITA the best. I don't like it better than Photoshop because Photoshop has just so many more features, but KRITA is really a good alternative. Yeah, so again, thanks to everyone who voted in this week's poll. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss future polls and live streams, because this is how we know what you want to see us draw. So those of you who voted for lizard and cat, you got it. Be sure that you vote to help us decide what we create next. All right, if you're still hanging out with us here, the next step is to join us on Discord, where you can grab these free goodies that we put out. And I will see you guys next time. So our next stream, let me see what's happening, is going to be with Josh. This Saturday, he's going to be creating dynamic character animations in KRITA. So if you're a KRITA user and you want to learn how to animate your character by hand and create a dynamic animation, join us this Saturday, and we will see you there. All right. All right, guys, take care and see you next time. Bye-bye.